Okay, hello, everybody. You're welcome again to monthly webinar series at Clan Initiative. This is the month of August, and it's an August event. As you can see, we have two guests. Yeah, these are not small people. Yoruba will say, yeah, not small at all. So, thank you so much to our guests for honoring our invitation for this month. And for those joining us for the first time, this is Clan Initiative, a youth-led non-profit organization, and we promote environmental sustainability and public health initiatives and programs across communities, currently in Nigeria, and very soon would expand to the rest of the world. So, yeah, thank you for joining. And today, our topic for this month is strategies for graduate school advancement in climate and sustainability. And we have two guests who are currently PhD candidates at Indiana University Bloomington. And it's going to be more of a panel discussion. So just to talk and they'll share their experience. We want to make it very real and practical. So not really, they'll tell us their experience, how they journeyed. So thank you for joining. I know you're hungry and you want to hear something. That's why you're here today. So yeah, before we dive in, I would like to read their bio. When I bring them up, they will still tell us more about themselves. But I would like to start ladies first. So I'll go first with Isioma. I call her Dr. Isi. So Isioma is a fourth year graduate student in the Department of Geography, Indiana University, Bloomington. Our research is broadly around climate and environmental science. For her PhD dissertation, she's working on drought extremes using global reanalysis data and climate models. She has interned with three local governments in Indiana. Wow, that's really impressive. She worked with their Department of Sustainability, and most of her responsibilities were centered around creating climate action plan, maps for strategic installment of electric vehicle charging stations, and developing plans for alternate transportation system aside from gasoline vehicles. Thank you, Isioma, for honoring our invitation again. And I'll go over to Kehinde Adebiyi's bio. Kehinde Kenny Adebiyi is a doctoral scholar in microbiology at Indiana University Bloomington. He earned a first class, wow, he earned a first class bachelor's degree in microbiology from Lagos State University. In Nigeria, we say you and he has received numerous scholarships, including the Steer Fellowship and the Ganifawa Imi Award. Kenny was a founding scholar at the Nigerian University of Technology and Management, focusing on African development. With over 7 years of experience in community building and policy making, he serves on the board of trustees and as director of international partnerships for SDGs Hacked Africa. Passionate about sustainable development, Kenny envisions a world of peace and shared prosperity. Thank you again, Isioma and Kenny, for joining. So, we have like, in quotes, big ones here on our webinar today. So, without much ado, we'll just go straight into the discussion today. So, like I said earlier, it's going to be more of a panel discussion. So, I'll bring up questions and they'll bring their responses and share their stories and experience. Then, afterwards, the participants can come up with their own questions and they'll be able to answer. So the first thing I'm going to ask Kenya and Isioma is, what's inspired your interest in climate and sustainability, and how have you evolved in this field? So what made you start? What made you go into this? So I would push it to Isioma first, then Kenny also can share his own thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. It's an honor to be here today, and hello to everyone out there. Thank you for joining the meeting. So my story of how I kind of got interested in climate and environmental sustainability is a very non-direct one. I was trying to come up with a, more inspiring story, but the truth is, during my secondary school days, I was really sure I wanted to go into business, either economics or accounting. So initially, I'd written JAM. I'm guessing everyone here is Nigerian. So I'd written JAM and tried to get into one of those departments, but I did not make the cutoff marks. So I had to get into geography. And the plan was to, study geography for a year and then write JAM again and apply for economics or accounting. Um, but I think along the line, that first year, I kind of, got interested. It was like something that I had to build on. It was a passion that came eventually, not something I had initially. So I heard about climate change. I heard about environmental sustainability. And a part of me, I've always been fascinated about how the climate works, how weather happens, why do we have rainfall at this time? Why is the temperature 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Fahrenheit? So I kind of learned about the basic foundations of those things and I grew interest in it. And something else that I really liked was GIS, Geographic Information System. So I was fascinated by cartography during my secondary school days. And getting to the university and knowing that, okay, I could do this with a computer and I don't have to draw it out with my hand was also something very fascinating to me. So yeah, that was how I kind of got interested in the field.
Thank you for sharing. Over to Ken.
Thank you so much, Ayo, for the opportunity. As you'd imagine from both of us' profile, that is Isioma and mine. There's one expert in climate, and that is definitely not me. That is Isioma. And I would like to also always say this, and even though Isioma didn't like me to say, she was my mentor and she still is in Education USA. So it's an opportunity to always pick beside her. Thank you for your leadership, Isi. Um, I was fundamentally not a climate person, but as fate will have it, I eventually came into it. I'm a microbiologist, a scientist by default. I've always been fascinated by science. Well, not until fateful events happened in my second year when I was in college, that is undergrad in Nigeria. And I met this guy by the name of Ola, and he showed me some 17 goals. And these goals have, no poverty, good health. And one of the key leading goals here is about, climate change, now to have a better world. And what made the goal kind of resonated with me is I grew up in a community where I like access to virtually everything there. At least I grew from an humble background, and I was committed to see that, like, what will happen to the next person? How can the next generation not experience the same thing I experienced while growing up? I remember vividly that fateful day. I wrote down in my diary then, can I just help one person? The word was just one person to now have experienced what I went through. And that's what made me start the Sustainable Development Goals from the word. It helped me to read a lot about climate change, a lot about sustainability, and took a lot of training, then became a UN fellow for sustainability. And this sprang my career in sustainability. But as fate would have it, in my final year of studying microbiology, I never believed that microbiology can be related to sustainability. My final year project was in environmental microbiology, and I specifically work on petroleum microbiology. That is, how can we use microorganisms to bioremediate polluted sites? So you can see the intersection. So in my second year, I started as an NGO, which now currently have 20,000 members back in Nigeria. But I was doing that, but again, I was just assigned a random project supervisor that brought my work in sustainability, and this brought my interest. And I'm really proud of the work we've done over the years, some of which I'm happy to share about. But these are just started from.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. So, going into the main course or to the main meal that we have for today, which is graduate school advancement. You guys have done really so well. Like I've met you in person when I was in Bloomington, and yeah, I know you guys are scholars. Your academic excellence, the scholarships, there's so many opportunities that you have. So we like to share how you even got here. To help people that want to know about steps to graduate school advancement and how to look for schools. So can you share a little bit of your story from Nigeria to the United States, how you started your PhD program, and what steps people can take in terms of graduate school advancement.
Okay, so sorry, were
Go
you
ahead,
going to say something?
go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So if you're trying to get into a graduate school program, the steps are usually similar across different departments, at least most of the things you have to do. So statement of purpose is one of those things, and it's basically you writing an essay to convince your reviewers or whoever would be reading your submission that you're a good candidate and you have some sort of experience or at least a strong interest in the program you're trying to get into. And that was something I had friends help me review. So I had people who had gotten into a graduate program in the US and I'd reach out to them to read my statement of purpose over and over again to make sure it was really good. One basic thing is recommendation letters. So I know some of you might not have the best of relationships with your previous professors. I did, but maybe it might not be the case, but you need to find at least 2 to 4 people that would be willing to write letters for you. Some schools require that you write something called the Graduate Record Examination and TOEFL. GRE is a critical reasoning exam, and TOEFL is a test of English. Not all school requires that, but you might be interested in a school that wants you to do that. Am I missing any other thing? I think those are like the core things that you would be required to do and maybe pay an application fee. So during my time, I just searched for the top, I think the top 20 schools in the US for a geography program because I knew I wanted to do geography or environmental science. And then a couple of schools came out and I had to check for the faculty members and what they're doing, their research to see if I was interested. And at the end of the day, I had 5 schools, University of Oklahoma, University of Kansas. I chose that one because I had a friend who was already there and they were willing to talk to a professor on my behalf for me to work with that professor. There was Clark University, there was University of Minnesota, and then Indiana University, Bloomington. So checking to make sure that there's a professor doing something you want to do is another important thing. And I know you didn't ask this, but from the list of questions you sent earlier on, I think 2 weeks ago, you also asked a question about scholarship. So I think if you're getting into a PhD program, you're most likely going to get a scholarship. I would strongly advise that you don't take a PhD program that is not fully funded because it is not worth it. PhD is a full-time job. You're going to, even if you're not teaching or working as a research assistant, doing your own research and working with your professor is going to be very time consuming and it is very extremely hard to do that part-time except you're looking at spending a very long period of time in the program. So most times PhD programs are usually funded, or if you want to come in for a master's program or any other program outside PhD, it might be a bit more difficult to get funding. And usually what I've seen people do is that they reach out to professors and they're like, do you need a research assistant? Do you have funding for someone who wants to do a master's program? There are certain departments that will offer scholarships for master's students. For instance, my department actually admits master's students fully funded, but not all departments is like that. Another thing you could do is to apply for external funding. I do not know some of these external scholarships off the top of my head, but it's something I could also compile. But believe me, Google is your best friend. It's like whatsoever you're looking for, it might take time, might take a lot of efforts, but if you do the digging, you probably find something that'll be helpful. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much. Over to Prof. Kenny.
Yeah, and Isioma do address a lot of things. And I'm glad that she addressed the second half of ISC strategies for graduate school advancement in any field, quite honestly, even beyond department. I divide graduate school application into 2 broad stages. The first is the pre-application phase, and the second is the application phase itself. You have the post, but the post-application phase comes if you have success, right? And I think the application phase is a bit finicky if you cannot satisfy the pre-application phase. And what do I mean by that? Look at what Isioma listed. From a statement of purpose to recommendation letters to having a good CV, you must have a story to tell. Because you're not just going there to write a statement of purpose with nothing. You're not going there with a mirage or a facade. So the big question I ask anyone I want to tell me is, they're like, I want to apply for this. I ask them the big question, what's your story? What are your experiences in this field? And I'm sure there are some questions which I will still ask us is, how can you bring up experiences to butter this? So Isioma covered all the ground with the reapplication phase, and I don't have anything too hard. But the key strategy here is that, like, it's significant. The application starts from August to December. I advise people from their January to July to start working on their pre-application phases, buffing up their profile. But it's not too late. If you are just understanding this, from August now to November, there's a lot that can be done in saying, where do you stand? Do you want to take certification training on some courses online? Do you want to volunteer for some purposes? Do you want to write review papers? Because that would then make a competitive candidate. Isioma can tell you this, the largest admission you can get for a program, let's say PhD, is maybe 10 or 15 students, master's max 30, and out of hundreds of applicants. To get scholarship is more problematic for master's people. So the big question you ask yourself as you prepare towards a strategy is, are you competitive enough? Is your story competitive? Is there a way you can describe your experience to ensure that you have a good statement of purpose? I do not support lying. I know people lie a lot, but to come back to onto you, are you sure what you want to write in your SOP is truly a reflection of what you've done? Yeah, I get embellishment, people trying to tell their story unique, but at least you have a content to speak about. So I think my key strategy in addition to what Isioma said is to reflect back and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How competitive do you think you are? And how eligible do you think you are? And this is not a session to decipher into what a personal statement looks like on an SOP, but if you know what those things look like, you will truly know where you have to do most of this work. But I'll keep it short for now because I know there are questions that specifically ask on how to kind of, get some of these competitive skills. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight on that. So let's take it a little bit more personal now. So what strategies helped you in your own application, from Nigeria, the pre-application, the application, and getting a fully funded PhD at Indiana University? So what strategies helped you?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Whenever I talk to people, I always try to, talk to them based on my experience because I can only speak for myself. So it's really nice that I get to personalize this. So I graduated from Obafemi Awolowo University in 2019. Oh, yeah. Oh, did you graduate from OAU?
Yeah, great
How
effect.
come I didn't know about that? Okay, great effect.
Great effect.
Yeah, so but
Glass
before
white. Great.
before I graduated, one thing I want to say is that networking is very important. Reaching out to people that's gone before you is very important. So before I graduated, I used to have a friend who we were in the same fellowship, and I can see a question. Okay, I think we'll come back to there.
Yeah,
He
we'll come
had
back.
applied to grad school, and he was in grad school, I think in the University of Tennessee when I was in my final year. So I'd reach out to him. The way I actually heard about grad school application was someone else talking about it. And I'm like, I think I want to further my education, but not in Nigeria. So I'd reach out to that person, and he had started advising me even before I graduated. So I already had all the skills or all the things that I felt I needed even before graduating in terms of the knowledge. I didn't have my transcripts and, some publications or things like that ready, but I knew, okay, this is what you have to do. So knowledge is very important. Talking to people that have done the same thing you intend to do is very, very important. Another thing is, starting early. I think what I also just said, covers that, and what Kenya said earlier. The process seems like, oh, it's just an application, right? You just put in an application and that's all. But it takes time. It takes time. It might take you a whole year to prepare in terms of like writing the exams and doing every other thing you need to do. So start today, even if it's you're searching for the schools that you want to go to, start today. And this same person I talked about was the one who told me about Education USA. Because then I was like, I think eventually when I was ready to apply, I was doing my NYSC and they were paying maybe 30,000 or 40,000 per month. And that wasn't enough for me to pay for my application fee. And I've always been an independent person. I didn't want to disturb my mom about it. And even if I was going to disturb, it was in dollars. It was expensive to apply to 5 schools and pay like $100 per school. So I'd reach out to this person. I'm like, what did you do? And he told me about a program called Education USA, which I think is a very good way to start because they give you all the guidance that you need. There are two programs. There is just the Education USA, anyone can join. I think you pay a very little amount of money. And then there's the Opportunity Funds program where they take first-class graduates and they kind of mentor you till you finish your application, you get admission, and then they fund things like your ticket fee, your visa fee. So it makes life like really easy for you. And I saw cases where, people who were in the Education USA program, but they were not in the Opportunity Funds program, got admission, and they put them in the Opportunity Funds program by paying for their flights and every other thing. So just stick around, be there, show up for the program. I would strongly advise against, going online and finding somebody to help you with your application. If you can't do the application, forget about grad school. That's just the truth. If you're too lazy or you feel like it's too much work, because when you come here, that's when you see real work. So I would strongly advise, don't go online looking for someone who would promise to, write your SOP, apply for you. It might be legit, but lots of these things are scam. I only speak for what I know. I'm sure about Education USA. Ayo or Kenny might know of other organizations that you might join. But it all boils down to open your mouth, ask questions. The worst that could happen is someone says, oh, don't disturb me, you're disturbing me. Or they do not respond to your message, which I really experienced during my application. But it's like, okay, if you don't respond to me, I'll reach out to the next available person. And also when you're talking to people, try to, get someone that is doing something related to what you do. So my friend was in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I told him I was interested in environmental science and geography. And I'd asked him if he had friends who were doing the program I wanted to do. And he had linked me up to them. And those people are people that I now write papers with, they've been taking me through the steps of, what happens after graduating grad school. So those are relationships you want to keep and make sure wherever you're reaching out to, they're connecting you to the next person and build good relationship. Don't be a user. Don't reach out to people just because you have questions or only when you have questions, Be kind in your dealings with people. Don't just, especially another thing is when you're reaching out to someone for the first time, be polite, right? Do not be too informal. I've had a stranger reach out to me and they're like, hello, dear, I have questions about grad school. And it kind of threw me off. I'm like, what? I don't even know you. Okay, I'm going to help, but I'm going to correct you. So that's my own personality. Someone else might be different where they don't really mind or they don't care. But I think the general thing around is if you're reaching out to people, try to be as formal as possible and keep those relationships. Don't get into grad school and you're like, I really don't care about you. I'm not in grad school, because there's life in grad school and there's life outside grad school. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those snippets of wisdom. Yeah, over to you, Kenny.
Isioma was my Education USA assignment. So basically, I don't want to regurgitate everything she taught me because she just said them now, quite honestly. But I would just, say other few salient points. I think my personal reasoning, as I said, was in three major segments. The first is like the strategy I used was to build myself. So the first thing I did was I knew I want to have a PhD in this field. And I went on LinkedIn to look at people, current graduate students, that are doing PhD right about. And I went through their profiles. And you see, okay, what are some things they have, what are some things they don't have. I look at the lacuna in some of my own profile. What are those things I can fix? And I started working on those things. That was very, very important for me. Now, the second thing though was because to an extent, I was an academic flying student. And the reason why I'm saying this, you will see, right? When I was in my final year, I applied to graduate school to about 5 schools. I had first class, I won so many awards, I knew I would get in. I just wrote my SOP thinking SOP is just normal. Everything was rejections because one thing was significantly missing: mentorship. No one reviewed my application. I didn't speak to anybody. I was full of myself. They're like, oh my God, my CV have tons of scholarship and profiles. And I saw in front of my eye people with lesser profile than I had, getting, scholarship and admission. And that showed me the power of mentorship. And irrespective of how best you may think you are, even being the BGS doesn't matter. Some people have to show you the path. And I'll tell you one very interesting mistake I made is the way I wrote my first essay was very interesting. I cannot forget. I made a case that, oh, I came from a very, poor background. I studied in a system where there's no infrastructure, but I was able to get this done. So I was making an argument of like, despite the limitation and challenges, I was able to achieve excellence. I never knew I was setting myself up to know that, like, okay, I'm okay, but my training is not the best entirely. I'm coming from a place where I had nothing. That was when my SOP was shaped. And it took me a while to realize that while I might mention that saliently, it should not have been the focus of my application, because it's like, why would somebody admit two persons that would go that same publication, but one person training was from a very standard place and the other person had I knew that through mentorship when I applied again. So the second time I did what Isioma said, I reached out to people on LinkedIn. Was people that also made me that I could apply to Education USA, where I became an opportunity fund program. People in my field, a lot of people will not reply you. I have to be very honest. Look at me, my LinkedIn messages over 2,000 messages. I reply a few. I can't. Like I said, I would die. So, but with consistency, with how you reach out to people, also being head on with your messages. Like I also send a message, hello, good morning. I don't know you. Like, what does that mean? So you reply a good afternoon or what? Like on LinkedIn. Not maybe because I don't want to do that, but it's taking my time. Putting your draft message. Hello, good morning. I saw your profile. I'm very impressed by it. I would like to follow the footstep. Blah, 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 blah. And I do sometimes even attach my CV. Just to be polite about it. And I got a couple response. And mentorship was the game changer for me. Quite significant. It was a game changer. The last thing I would say is hard work. It takes training. The thing, my application taught me was application is not about how smart you are sometimes, it's about diligence and resilience, especially some exams like GRE and TOEFL, or if your degree requires you to write that. Like the smartest person is not the person that have the highest scores in GRE. It's like there's a route in which these things are gone through, there's a way in which it goes through. And you can only get those tricks by constant hard work and working back and forth on things. So I think three things here is very, very important. Is building a strong profile for yourself, being academically edgy, recognizing that lacuna in your gap by doing a comparative study with people in the field. The second also, as I said, is lack of mentorship, so that your case won't be like my case, where you used a year, I even used them. I remember I got a loan of about 200,000 naira then to apply. Then dollar was still not too bad. It was 400 naira or so, not like the way it is. I was able to still apply like 5 schools with 200,000 naira. But everything went to waste because I didn't have mentorship. So the important thing is mentorship. And the key thing is your hard work and diligence, because it takes time. Isioma said Google is your best friend. But one thing she also mentioned is it can take a lot of time to get your answer on Google. Like, if you truly want to go into the roots and deep of it, it's not doing surface level work. But I like to tell people that the thing you cultivate during your application process will become handy when you start the program. Because whatever challenges you think you are going through while applying, it is in no way comparable to what you're coming to face. The end result is greater, but it's really, really, really a lot of hard work here. So if you cannot even do that diligently, then this program or this degree is not.
Thank you so much. This is so loaded and powerful. I hope the participants are making notes and taking note of some of these great things. The next question I have is for those that currently or previously they do not have a background in climate and sustainability. So how can they transition, and they are passionate, like I can do something about this problem, this climate change issue they are talking about, plastic pollution. How can people transition from what they are currently doing into the climate and sustainability space?
Okay, thank you. So first I want to say, when it comes to grad school, I think universities are pretty flexible with you changing your interest or what you want to do. compared to like an undergrad where it's like you have to meet a cutoff mark or something like that. With grad school, there's a bit of flexibility. I would say 50% of the people in my department did not do geography as their undergrad program. It was maybe someone did gender study, someone did ecology, different departments. So there's a bit of flexibility there. Now, before I talk about how you can, change your course, I would want to mention that personally, I would advise you not to go entirely different into a field that you know nothing about, right? Because you would think that grad school is a place to just learn. Why that is true, it is a place for expertise also to some extent. I studied geography for my undergrad program, and I still struggled during my first year coming into grad school because I had to learn new things I had no idea about. So if you probably did something related to art or business, I would advise. Now, I need to say this is my personal, perception. It might not be true for everybody. I would advise that you go for a more policy related climate, topic. And if you did something more related to science, then going into the more like physics, chemistry part of climate science makes more sense, because you get into school and the professors will be teaching and they expect you to know certain things, and it could be a living hell if you have no idea what you're doing in school. So that's one thing. So how can you move to an unrelated course? So we already mentioned asking questions and reaching out to people who are doing those things that you plan to do. Secondly, you can ask them, okay, what can I do? My BSc is not in this course. What can I do that would make me stand out? Because if I'm a reviewer and I have a student who, for instance, did environmental science as their undergrad program, and someone who did something entirely different, I'm more likely to pick the person who has an undergrad in environmental science if you are both applying to the Department of Environmental Science. So you need to put in extra work, right? And I always tell people that the application process is not just one item that the reviewers look at. It's holistic. It's the whole application. So if, for instance, your SOP is well written, it's well convincing, your GRE score is really high, your CV is outstanding, you can show you volunteered, you can show you go for conferences, and it's just like really convincing. And then there's this person who is just coming with, oh, my undergrad was in environmental science. Then I think you're likely to get into the program. So you want to be able to sell yourself. So ask people. For me, if I'm to advise people who want to get into climate science and they are coming from an unrelated background, I would say try to go for conferences, for seminars, try to also talk at those conferences or seminar. Try to do a mini project in your community, and then maybe write a blog about it, maybe have a YouTube channel where you talk about what you want to do in the future and maybe the little experience you have in it. Collaborate with people if you have the opportunity to write papers. When I was doing my NYC, I had a friend who was doing a geography program here, and I'd reach out. He was writing a paper, and I'm like, can I at least add something to this paper and read and, have some sort of contribution? And maybe you had me to the authorship. Those things also prepare you for grad school and what you are supposed to expect here, especially if you have no idea about the departments. Now, I would want to say that I do understand that sometimes we have passion and we really want to do something. And this is not me discouraging you from following your passion. I'm referring to the first statement about trying to do something you have an idea about. If you strongly believe that that's your path and then you're able to do it regardless of the order, go for it. But if you know that you might need some sort of training to go into an entirely unrelated departments, I would say maybe you prepare yourself before going into it. But yeah, so reach out to people, ask them questions, and then, do all those extra stuff that they would not expect an undergrad to do. Write papers, go for conferences, go for seminar, volunteer, and I think you would be good.
Thank you. Yeah, over to Kenny.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, Isioma going ahead of me, to kind of make things easy for when I come up. And I think one thing I would like to mention is from the fact that like sustainability and climate is that one field that is central. Because I agree with everything Isioma said about not moving from, something totally polar and opposites. I would just address the passionate mind. So like, because of the stake we have in the issue of climate change and sustainability dynamics, virtually all fields are incorporating that. So look at someone like Isioma, did a bachelor's in geography, but still want to pursue climate and sustainability, but further advances herself in geography and climate atmospheric sciences and the likes. Someone like me, I'm a scientist, and I became so passionate about sustainability, but I'm still doing my microbiology, but now I decided to focus more on my research in environmental microbiology and how can we use microorganisms to have more biodegradable approaches. And I can go on and on about how virtually all fields tailor into this aspect of sustainability. So when you ask yourself the big question, what is your background and what are you passionate about? And I think you can take a bit of research to see if there's an intersection at all. And some programs are very flexible. And this speaks to one core fact Isioma said. As you Google programs, Google faculty members, and you will see how different faculty members in those departments, even the Department of Geography, you'll be surprised to see, or even environmental science, a faculty member, working on financial frameworks for accountability for sustainability. That is, how do we gather for fundraising for climate change? There are people that study that fundraising dynamics, that's their research. And you're someone that comes from accounting background, but you're interested in it. You see, being able to create an intersection between your accounting field and this knowledge of sustainability, you're not too far off. So as you look at your background, in sustainability and climate change is a very interestingly broad field that everybody wants to tap into. So even political sciences, I've seen someone studying climate policy analysis. That is, they work at the front of ensuring how can we get leaders to come up with people-centered policy. Because our background was basically in international relations, but they want to continue with policy making in climate change and energy development. So I think that it would be a miss if maybe you do bachelor's in maybe mathematics even too cool, maybe bachelor's in, let's say, theater art, and you don't want to do a master's in geography. You're in for a lot of, catching up to do and to survive that, especially coming from Nigeria again, that'll be quite problematic. So yes, I think my straightforward answer is virtually all of your field can be linked to sustainability, quite honestly, and just ensure that you're not too far off. And I think that because, again, you are not like an independent researcher, so you can't just come up with like, oh, you want to match these two fields together. There are faculty members that a lot of researchers are in climate change now. And if you take a lot of time, you see that 2 or 3 persons that kind of centered a bit of your previous expertise to what you are interested in doing. And that's the approach I would take for any new person coming to the field.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those answers and responses. The next question is how to maximize that opportunity. So after applying, you get your admission, and when you get here, sometimes many people are just over focused in quotes on just the PhD program, but there are so many other things, so many other opportunities. Like the first thing I read about Isioma when I was even applying for my master's was how she did internship with the McKinney Climate Fellowship. That was like the first, that was how I got to know Isioma. Then I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So the question is, how can graduates leverage internships, volunteer work, or academic projects to enhance their employability and make meaningful contributions to the field or get so many opportunities during that program after getting the admission? How can they maximize that opportunity?
Yeah, so it all falls back to you networking with people because you never know about an information except you're told or you see it, right? So first year of grad school can be a bit difficult because it's a lot, especially if you're coming as an international student. It's not just school, you're trying to settle into a new environment, a new climate. And I mean that literally. The climate is different, but also figuratively, it's a different society, right? And you're trying to also make yourself a person that is recognized in that country. And what do I mean? You're trying to get your social security number. You're trying to get your maybe driver's license or something that you'll be using to travel that will make your life easier. So it's like a lot coming at you, and nobody's going to tell you what to do. At least for Indiana University Bloomington, there wasn't any standard orientation that covered all of those things. You have to be very proactive. So being very proactive is very important. Don't wait for people to tell you that this is what you're supposed to do. If you see something that seems like it's not clear because it's not clear. Don't make assumption of this is what they were trying to say. Call and ask question. And I used to tell people that I can remember like 4 or 5 years ago, I used to be a very quiet, shy person that never talked to anyone. I felt like I could always figure things out. But coming to grad school, I realized that you need people. You need people to show you the way. So I would say pay attention to your school email. There'll always be emails that will go out from your university showing internship opportunities or projects that people are looking for people to work with. There is a tendency for you to get overwhelmed because grad school gets crazy. You're doing classes, you're teaching, you're researching, all those things. And sometimes you see an email and you're like, College of Arts and Science, and like, this doesn't concern me as long as it's not from my professor. So as much as that seems like it's a normal thing for you to know, I know that when things get crazy, there's a tendency for you to ignore emails that you feel are not for you. But try to open up your emails and always read them. Also, I think going to conferences is very important. Now, depending on what you want to do after grad school, tailor your conferences into what that thing would be. If you want to go into academia, go for academic conferences. Now, your professor might be pushing you towards academia because most professors are usually proud when their students graduate and they become professors also. But I would say own whatsoever you want and say, okay, if I'm going into the industry, focus on conferences that are more industry based because that's where you get the connection that you need, right? So let's say for someone who is interested in academia, go for academic conferences, and then you walk up to people and say, oh, this is what I do. One thing I do is I have a business card, or sometimes I have a QR code on my phone to my LinkedIn page. And as I'm talking to people, I'm dropping something with them, and I'm also collecting something from them where I could, send a follow-up email or something. So most times, some of those things are usually not successful. But believe me, there's always a lesson in all like interaction or networking. That person might not be able to provide you the internship or project that you need, but it might be like, oh, I know someone who works somewhere, right? And then they introduce you to that person. And that person introduces you to someone else. And, you've met like 5 people. And it might be the 5th person that will have an opportunity for you. But you never know. So I would say reach out to people. And also, coming in as a first-year student here, you are competing against people who grew up here in the US, right? So they have a certain advantage in terms of they know the opportunities to look out for. They know things they're supposed to be doing to get the jobs that you are both applying for. So you might not get what you want during the first year. Let's say you got the information, you applied, and you did not get it. Build the habits of following up with people, right? Regardless of rejection, reach out to people and be like, thank you so much, even if it's not with all your heart, right? Sometimes it's like you're angry. It's like, thank you so much for the rejection. Don't say it that way, but you know what I'm trying to say. I saw this project you guys worked on, and just strike a conversation and be like, I know you guys did me wrong, but regardless, I still want to keep you in my corner. And that has worked for me personally. I also have a friend who recently got an internship with Amazon. And before now, she had gotten like 2 rejections, but she kept in touch with the project manager. And, before you know, it kind of became a convo where the person was like, oh, you don't even need to apply next year, just drop something and I would reach out to the people around me to get you the internship. So do not underestimate the place of networking and interpersonal relationship with people. Another thing is you need to be looking out for the trends in the field. Things are changing rapidly, right? 4 years ago, the things that were required of a climate scientist are not really the things that are required now. For me, for instance, I want to go into the industry, and I have been reminding myself that I need to do things that are most relevant. Now, these are the 4 core things I think that at least you should generally have. The first is the research skill, which I think you'll get in grad school. The ability to see a problem and to come up with a solution or a way to go about the problem, right? And the ability to write well. Now, you need some sort of analytical skill, some statistical skill, because you know the problem, you know the solution in your head, but you need some analysis to get you the solution. So you need to take some sort of statistics class. I think every grad student has to do that. And lastly, you need to know how to use a tool that will help you carry out the analysis. So be it geographic information system, remote sensing, some sort of programming, Python, MATLAB, R. I don't think this applies to everyone, but I'll say generally, those are like the 4 things you want to get better at. And lastly, you also want to be able to present your results in a way that people can, get what they want and move on without you rambling, like say, okay, this is the problem and this is the solution, or these are things that I feel like you can do. So the ability to also communicate in a convincing manner, very important. So I'll say broadly, those are the things you want to get better at, and then just follow the trend online of, okay, what are the new things I have to learn about as the field keeps changing? So yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Over to you, Kenny.
Yeah, I think, Isioma did answer a lot of things on maximizing opportunities. But I would say that, so when you come here, right, I usually, section these things into, there's usually this refractory period where you're trying to balance. You'll be a bit shocked, maybe your first semester. And that's also the key part of also having people you work with. Mentorship also still helps. But I think the key thing I like to tell people is it will pass on one condition, if you're hardworking, because it's not pass if you're not, there's no question about it. And as you get adjusting, as you're starting to adjust into the system, you see a lot of opportunities around you. And it's very, very important to start again when you speak. Let's say you're in geography and you speak to someone like someone the Marquise Fellow. You ask that question, what does she do to get there? Because the earlier you start, the better for you. That's the most important. I think for those doing masters is just a 2 years program. Some even a 1 year program. Before you know it, something could have done, everything just went away. That's why you need to, start getting the information way ahead on and ahead on. I tell people your focus should not shift. I think it's misplaced priority. If you are involved in a lot of things and your academic is struggling because of that. But I think that you can maximize your time significantly to ensure that I still volunteer some of those things. The United States is a very interesting country with a lot of, by the way, if you come to the US, a lot of things goes on campus. I usually keep track of university news and emails. And most of them don't read it, they don't open it. And I was at Silicon Valley in February or March, just because of they send the email, random email from who is interested in going intersection of science and entrepreneurship, blah, blah, blah. And I reached out to them, and those things matter. Also, being abreast of information, don't be entirely narrow focus on some of these things, because this is where you build most of your network. I put it to you, it's not that easy also getting an internship, but more important, it's also not that easy getting a job. But you can lay the foundation framework while you're in your study year. That is the part where you should have done a lot of those things. But people that even intend to maybe after their graduate studies, they would like to maybe stay here for a while to do their career. You realize that if you had asked some information, particularly with documentations and even some green card processes, you don't want to be like, wow, I wish I knew this earlier. Because this thing takes time. It takes a lot of time. And just don't wanting to be disturbing anybody who won't cut it, quite honestly. Because some application takes a year to process. I've seen someone that I'm even trying to work on their case now that because out of shared ignorance, they couldn't even get an OPT because they didn't apply on time and they've been asked to return back to Nigeria. Mind you, this person got a job in the Clinton Institute, a full-time job. And having to pay like another $5,000 for appeal. Why? Because they don't know about the law. You have to apply between 60 days each. Like, it's today when I think about that, it makes me go mad. They're like, oh my God, you got one of the best job of ever. So again, keep asking questions, keep following. All the small information matters, even from the get-go, from the way you do things. I remember when I first got my admission, even though Isioma was there to help me all through. I was about going to pay money for vaccines in Nigeria. It starts from these little things. And I reached out to her, what vaccine did you get? I could not have asked her, I don't want to disturb her. She made me realize I didn't need to get anything. That just come, I does that. Some school does it. And that's why I only got the yellow fever thing pass. And I got here, I would have spent a lot of money and I still have to do all of them again. So it's for access to those little tiny details. You see a lot of things that I would have spent time and resources on how to make things way better. And so ask questions, obviously ask it politely, follow up with people. I think that will help you a lot of things. Also, start getting clarity of maybe where your end goal is. Because another thing is that you may also misplace your priorities. There's a lot of things you can participate in, but if you don't know where you'd like to end on, you will not know where you put some of your focus. It's okay for career to take a bit of a turn, but it's not too far off, quite honestly. I go to a lot of conferences, like both scientific conferences and humanitarian conferences, because I know my career is in a tripartite way. Maybe as someone that doesn't want to be an academic, then you want to just focus entirely on that. Work with people. How do you get a postdoc? How does it work? Etc. Etc. I think that's what I would just largely say. The key thing is ask a lot of questions, have a timeline of where you see yourself going, start early. The earlier you start, the better.
Nice. Thank you so much. Because of time, we can keep going on and on. There will be one more question from my hand, then I'll open the floor to the participants for their questions. So finally, what advice would you give young people looking to make a meaningful impact in climate change, sustainability, or those that are trying to process their graduate school internationally outside Nigeria?
So first I'll say be patient with yourself. These things take time. Learning about a new area, or even if it's not a new area, trying to be an expert in a particular field takes time. Do not compare yourself to other people. Be like, oh, I think this person is doing better. Or you'll be like, oh, I think my professor thinks I'm not doing well. Your professor was probably once in your shoes and now he's an expert because he spent years doing those things. So be kind to yourself. I know Kenny and I have talked a lot about how grad school is a lot of work. And it takes a toll on your mental health sometimes if you're not careful, because research, you can't do research without failing, because it's like, that's what it is. You're trying to research something that you're not even sure exists. And sometimes it's like, you find out it doesn't exist, you have to take another route. With practice, you kind of get used to it. You understand that failure is part of the process. But at the beginning, it might be, oh God, why? And you beat yourself down. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to grow. Put in the work. Some of these things might sound repetitive, but collaborate with people, network with people, keep in touch with people. Also, I think when I think about making an impact, it could be anything, right? It could be you might end up being a professor or publishing papers that other experts could read and they could make a difference. And your paper could also make a difference in your field. But if you're looking at a larger audience of talking to, like policymakers or talking to your community, I would say you should get into the habit of trying to make whatsoever you do as relatable as possible to them. You should get into the habit of being able to communicate climate science in a very simple way to them. You might think that everyone knows what climate change is. No. And sometimes as we get into academics, we kind of forget that the world outside is a bit different and they do not understand some jargons and technicalities. So I would advise that you write things like article blogs. I would advise that you make YouTube videos that people outside your niche can relate to. And sometimes you never know where the connection will come from, or where someone will see something that you've done and be like, oh, I want you to come work with me. So put yourself out there, right? Write those blogs, get someone to review it, communicate what you do often to your friends and people outside your niche and see if they understand what you're trying to talk about. Being able to get people to understand what you do and to show them that, oh, this is a problem and it's relevant is very important. And lastly, whenever you're talking about climate science, try to make it as relatable as possible. Humans don't really care about things that do not affect them, right? If it's not a tornado that is affecting me, how is it my business? But if you're talking to like a farmer, you could talk about, oh, have you noticed that in the past few years, temperature has been increasing and your crops are not growing as well as they used to. So make it as relatable as possible. Don't just go and be like, oh, we're killing the planet and climate change is happening. And people are like, how does that concern me? So with practice, with time, with hard work, with patience, you get there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prof. Kenny.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will start from the last two statements Isioma said. Hard working is key, significantly key. Cannot escape without that. And I think give yourself opportunity to learn. Career school journey is a marathon, it's a learning curve. Whenever I think about it, it was stressful, but it gives you a new perspective of things, how to tell your story, I learned a lot. It was during my graduate application, I wrote like 3 academic papers, made me understood what I didn't even understand when in college days, how to write paper. And obviously you get more better when you start a graduate program. So these are a very good avenue to intentionally learn. Because sometimes we get carried away with the end goal. Now, what's the end goal? You want to get that scholarship. You want to get that, that master's admission. And I agree with you. But it makes you don't want to do anyway you want to get. Eventually, you don't get it. So see opportunity to learn from yourself, learn from your peers. It's very, very important to do that. I had an accountability partner, the name of Dio, and we meet like every weekend to see what he's doing, what am I doing. Then what is, because he also has his mentor, what his mentor say, what he might say. I mean, we cross-fertilize ideas. And all of us got offers, even beautiful offers. And that works a lot. Also, give room for failure. And it's something people don't like to say. I have not seen yet, and I would like to see maybe at least West, maybe Isioma, I don't know whether that was your case. I applied to 7 schools, I got I think 5 offers. But I've not seen 7 over 7 or 10 over 10 people before. I wish to see that. But it means gives room for rejection. There's a lot of reasons why that could happen. It could not even be about your application because there's no funding in that your field you're interested in. It could also be about your application. When we bring me to the final thing is that make your application generalized and also unique. So what do I mean by that? There's a story you're trying to pitch about why you think you're competitive. And why that to be the overarching theme of your personal statement, it must tie into a uniqueness per school. And this is a mistake I see people make a lot. They just only edit the school name. I take my time to tweak my story to fit into the narrative of the faculty members, to tweak into the narrative of the school itself. So while there's a generalized story I'm trying to sell, there's each uniqueness for each school. Because I think that why are you trying the same thing over and over again and you expect things to change when you keep getting rejection? I don't think that's a plausible way to go. So, and in all of this, it's going to work out. I'm a person of faith, and faith is one thing that also helped me. So, whatever it is you believe in, or whatever it is that you do, I think this metaphysical dimension, divine model after your hard work kind of puts our heart at ease. Because one they don't tell you is the waiting period. I think there's a part of me I don't like at all. It's very, very tough. It's about you may not know you want like 3 or 4 months. And sometimes faith helps in that regard, having done your best and giving the rest to God. And I think one thing I also learned is don't make a mistake of putting your life on pause because of your applying. I told you I applied during my first time. I got multiple rejections. And why that didn't weigh me down, because I was like, oh, I have a terrific profile, definitely get it. Because I was applying for jobs. That was when my first job was with the UN, when I worked remotely. So while that was painful, my first job ever was, I was earning dollars in Nigeria. I was okay, comfortable. So that may not be your case. But those that want to focus on my application and choose to resign and not applying to any other job, not focusing your life in Nigeria. I don't pray things go south, but I don't think that's the best of decision to make, because while you have your plan A, you should have your plan B, plan C, and plan D, because that's the most practical thing anybody should do. And with all of that, I wish you guys are the very best, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, guys. This was really, really with a lot of wisdom and useful information. So I'll open the floor now for questions. We have a question in the chat box, which I'll read out. Then, if you have any other questions, you guys can reach out. Is having a publication or a compulsory is having a publication a compulsory criterion for applying for a PhD? Can you do a PhD by not publishing a paper?
Yes, you can do a PhD without having a published article. I know a lot of people who did not have any paper, got into grad school. I even know people who are in their second and third year and they still don't have a paper and they're fine. Or people who did masters and eventually graduated without a paper, got a job. So you don't necessarily need a publication. But I do not want to rule out that for everything in life, there are always exceptions, right? There might be certain schools where they put it up on their website that you have to have a journal article published if you look at the requirements for the application. So that's why it's very important to go to the school's website you're trying to apply to, go to the department you're trying to apply to, reach out to the secretary or any other person you feel like will give you useful information and say, do I need a journal article to get into the PhD program? But generally, I don't think it's like a core requirement. It's good to have it, but you can get into grad school without having it. And if you don't have it and you find a school that you want to get into that requires it, still apply. You never can tell if you have a very strong application. And you also apply to other schools that do not require it. So another thing I think we didn't mention is that we kind of talked about it, but I would say specifically apply to multiple schools. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Kenny, do you want to add something?
I think Isioma addressed it perfectly, quite honestly.
All right. Other questions? Are there other questions from the participants? You can unmute and ask your question before we close. I know they covered so many things already. So what if you have questions or clarifications, you can just unmute and ask. Okay, Falamde can go for it.
So hi everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kenny and Isioma for that very insightful, presentations and all you've said since. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So, like, I've found myself asking this question multiple times because anytime I have the opportunity of attending webinars like this, I like to ask that particular question. Like, let me start by saying I'm still an undergraduate student in OAU IFE. So, but approaching, my finals. So the thing is, I've, heard graduate students saying, okay, how this thing I could have done it better, this I could have done it better, and they have a lot of regrets, and it is good that you as an undergrad, you are able to, learn from those things so that maybe by the time you approach that, you get to that level, it makes it more easier for you to, just jump on it and get things done. So I have a lot in my, information bank, like maybe some people say, okay, as a student, you should volunteer leadership, if you are able to work with your professors and all that. So I'd like to ask specifically, maybe Mr. Kenny and the other speaker, what's one specific thing that, this thing is very much important. It's very much, crucial, and undergraduates should probably, add to his or information bank and try to work on it while still being an undergraduate. That would probably put you on a very competitive end by the time you are applying or getting to that level.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead first. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You can go ahead, Isioma.
No, I was actually going to say you should go first for this one.
It's a very interesting question because there's a lot of things that needed to be done. So depending on the skill you are, but for me, if I'm to ask what would I have done better, even my story, I've said it. I didn't have mentorship early in this regard. So I knew it's very key because I knew from my third year I want to do a graduate program. So some people don't know. And I knew that way early, but I refused to have gotten mentorship that early. And that cost me, over a year of failure, right? Which is fine. I'm not regretting, quite honestly. But so if you have clarity already, I think look at someone like you are already doing that. I never attended Sukadi's school session. I was my undergrad, was my business. Not until when I graduated, right? So I think having that, when you have that clarity early, tap into information like this, something I would have done definitely better. The second thing which, I don't think I would have done better because to honest, I think I performed exactly that I tell undergrad is, if you're still in undergrad, try to get the best grade you can. As far as you're still there. I believe if you have a 2-2, you can still get a master's scholarship. It doesn't matter. But I tell that would have graduated. But still, you are still in that school. Even if it's your last semester, and your semester result is not good, that singular transcript can change your narrative. That times transcript. And I tell them that while you are still there, don't be saying stories of, and it's a mirage when they tell you that 35 students in Nigeria is first class in the US. I don't know who came up with that fact. It is wrong, it is incorrect, and it's like, I don't know how it happens.
It's a
So
fallacy.
It's like,
don't let anybody tell you that. So I think that'll just be it for me. Just being the best at what you do and get more mentorship. And don't overwhelm yourself too. Very, very important. You cannot do everything at once. Just whatever it is you do. Because I've seen people that read their work, their CV is so a lot of list, but while speaking to them in interview, they are so superficial. So you see they are here and there, and there's nothing they are dig deep in. And I think that is also not the best thing. And with that, I think Isioma will have some additional things.
Yeah. So I think Kenny has already talked a whole lot about some of the things I wanted to talk about. But the other two things that come to mind are programming skills. In Nigeria, it seems to be a big deal, but over here, it's not a big deal. It's not required for all departments, but for most departments, you might need to use some sort of programming tool for your analysis. And coming into grad school, I had no idea about how to program. And your professor gives you assignments. They tell you, oh, this is how you do it in R, go and figure it out. And you start struggling. So get some sort of programming skill. And secondly, I would say get into the habit of communicating. I'm saying this because for me personally, that was something I struggled with because I was a very quiet person. And I think the Nigerian academic system doesn't push you to talk a lot. When you come into the classroom here, you will talk. You have to give presentation. You have to ask questions. Your professor throws you in the water and asks you, oh, what do you think about this thing? And then it's like, you might know it, but it's like there's stage fright because it's not something you're used to. So, and yeah, the American kids are, even if they don't know what you're talking about, it's press, they're talking so fast with confidence. So build
Right.
the confidence of talking in public. Very important. Don't be like, I'm humble. There's no humility in this. It's not, they don't see you as being arrogant. It's a very important skill to have, to be able to know what you want to say and communicate it effectively. And also programming skills. You might not need it, but having it would still make you a better candidate, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Guys, this is what a lot of thousands seminar or webinar. I mean, people are paying a lot to do this. So this is like, please appreciate it. Thank you to Isioma and Kenny for all of this. They are sharing and pouring out from their heart. I know people are dying for this information. And so many people reach out to me, hey, I want to go to grad school. They are not here now. Later on, they will start. This is like free access, like live. Anyway, any other questions before we call it a day? Olamileko, I hope they answered all of your questions. Definitely, I know they did with so many icing on top of the cake. So, but yeah, other
Yes, they
questions.
actually did. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So lucky you. I wish I heard this during my undergrad. Maybe.
I like to say though that, like, I don't know, I himself can handle this webinar without both of us because he has a lot of experts in this. All this fake humility, don't mind it. I think one thing, yeah, it's just what it is. So I would say that thanks for organizing this and had fun being able to talk about some of these things. Very much.
Anyway. All right. Any last question? Like, can take two more before we leave. Any other questions? Okay. So, in the absence of any other questions, I want to say very big thank you to Prof. Kenny, Prof. EC for honoring the invitation of a small boy like me. Thank you.
You're whining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was really very, very helpful, insightful, and useful. And yeah, we put our webinars, we put them on our YouTube page. So definitely, those that were not able to attend, I always refer them to the YouTube page. If anyone has any question, please go to our YouTube page. Go and listen to Dr. Isi and Prof. Kenny. So thank you so much again. And to our participants, I hope you really learned so much from today's or this month's webinar. And yeah, till next month again. Yeah, we hope you join us for another session. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Yeah, you too, Ayo and Kenny.
So
Take
much.
care.
Yeah,
Thank you,
have fun.
Kenny.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, bye. Thank you.